going to do section 4.2. It's chapter 4, section 2. You're going to notice that we're going to start looking at, solving algebraic equations, tables. We're going to even touch a little bit on slope-intercept form today. All right, so when we do these types of problems, which ordered pair is a solution of the equation, this is like a check. And essentially what we're doing is, if I take a look at the equation, negative x plus 2y equals 8, that's a line. And what I'm checking is to see if this ordered pair, negative 2, 3, is on or off the line. Sometimes the ordered pair is off the line. That would be a no solution. Sometimes the ordered pair is on the line, and that would be a solution. So that's what we're checking to see, is it a solution or not. So we're going to be using the check like we did with hands-on equations. So I'm going to go minus, I'm going to put in negative 2 plus 2 times 3 equals 8. I have minus a negative, which is your, chop, chop. So 2 plus 6 equals 8. And I get 8 equals 8. And it's a check. So yes, this is a solution. The dot is on the line. So it looked like this when I graph it. Okay. And you go, Mrs. Medvick, do we have to write all that stuff every single time we did the problem? No, but I'm putting it in your notes so you have that aha moment like, oh, okay, now I know what we're checking for. All right. We okay? Questions? You have to put yes or no, it's a solution. Okay, that you do need to do. And you're going to revisit this in geometry, so it's not like, oh, I don't really get it, it's no big deal. Yeah, you're going to see it again, so you want to make sure you do a nice job. All right, let's take a look at number 2. We're going to do the same type of thing. I'm going to put 4 in for x. I'm going to put a negative 0.5 for y. 4 plus a negative 1 equals 5, and you're going to notice that 3 equals 5. That is not a solution. So no, not a solution. The dot is not on the line. So you got a line and it's off the line. Okay? Now, on problems like this, I don't want you to graph them. I didn't give you graph paper. What's really nice is when you take a high stakes test like an ACT or something like that, and you do it, but it doesn't feel quite right, you can always check it. Like if they had you graph something and you graphed it, this is another way that you could check it. Check to make sure your answer is correct. You could literally graph the equation and make sure if you wanted to. Questions? All right, let's go to the next problem then. Notice it's graph the equation, all right? When you do these for me, I know in the past you made a table right away. I'm going to ask you when you do these to start solving for y. And the reason why I am is a little less work in the table itself. And also it's going to set the stage for something later. All right. So when you get these problems, x plus y equals 4, I want to get y by itself. So what do I need to do? I'm going to subtract x. So I get y equals negative x plus 4. Right? You can go, well, Mrs. Medvick, does the x have to come first? Can I write 4 minus x? You can, but I'm setting the stage for slope-intercept form later. And once you start doing that and flip-flopping the x and the 4, You start running into bad habits when we need to do slope-intercept form. Okay, so just do it now. Learn it now, do the work now, and it'll make sense later. Okay, so the x should come first. Okay. All right, the next step then is to make a table. So I'm going to make an H table. Now, in the past, they gave me the domain. Do I have the domain? I do not. So now I get to choose. Now, most students choose 1, 2, 3 because they're easy. I don't choose those. I choose -1, 0, and 1. I choose -1 because it's negative. I choose 0 because it's kind of a neutral, easy number. And I choose 1 because it's positive. And what that does is it gives you an idea of the ordered pairs a little bit better because you're dealing with some negative numbers too. All right. So when you do these, I'm going to ask you to do a negative number. -1 is probably the easiest. Make sure that you show your work, right? There's still some of you, you're just really sluggish on the type of work you need to show. And then I'm going to plug in a 0. And then I plug in my 1 because it's 1 positive. So I tend to do -1, 0, and 1, and I like you to dabble with those negative numbers a little bit. Also, not particularly this problem, but sometimes when you start getting into 3, 4, and 5 with your domain, your output or range gets to be huge, and it doesn't fit on your graph very well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plot the points, and then you'll notice it says to connect and make the line. Do you see that? The reason why you're doing that is because you chose the numbers. Okay, when you pick out the numbers and put stuff in, you get to connect the dots. Right? They didn't tell you what the domain should be. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to graph this. I got -1, 5. So the dot's there. And then here. And then here. And then I'm going to connect those dots and make sure that you put arrows on them. They have no restrictions on them. Tomorrow we get restrictions on our domain. When you graph it on paper, draw nice and straight axes, put arrows on your axes, do hash marks. You want it to look real pretty when you do it. Okay, this graph paper that I'm handing out right now is for your homework. I've got one more graph that we need to do before you get to your assignment. All right. This next one, kids really struggle with, and yet it's the easiest one there. And they struggle because they're like, well, it just says y equals, or it just says x equals. They're not always in the form y equals mx plus b. And this scares kids. They're just like, what's going on? Okay? Don't worry about it, right? This is how you do it. When we have y equals -3, look at your graph. Find where y equals -3 and put a dot there. Okay? And then you're not going to draw the line on the axis. So you're not going to draw it on the y-axis. You're going to do the opposite. So it looks like this. That wasn't very straight, but you get the idea. This is where y equals -3, and it's a horizontal line. So if y was -2, you put a dot on -2, you draw a horizontal line. If y equals 10, you put a dot on 10, and you draw a horizontal line. You don't have to memorize it. Just know you don't draw the line on the axis. Okay? When x equals 2, well, x equals 2 is right here. Right? I'm not going to draw it on the y-axis or the x-axis. I'm going to draw the opposite. So this is x equals 2, and this is vertical. So it's not something you have to memorize. It's something that it's just pretty easy. You put your dot and draw your line. Now, one student asked me last hour, Mrs. Medvick, what happens if it's x equals 0? She's like, the dot has to go here. So if at x equals 0, how do I know which line to go on? Well, if x equals 2, it goes up and down as a vertical line. X equals 0 is going to be a vertical line also. So again, it's not something you have to memorize. All you do is put your dot on it and do opposite of what the axis is. And you can apply, well, I did this for x equals 2, so if x equals 0, it's going to be this way. If y equals 0, what type of line is it going to be? It's going to be horizontal. Questions? Then you got one, well, if generally you don't have both of them being 0, but if x equals 0, it's going to be vertical. If x or y equals 0, it's going to be horizontal. So you could have two lines that are on the axes, and that's okay. That's a great question. All right. Notice on the bottom here it says the graph of y equals is horizontal, and there's the ordered pair. The graph of x equals is a vertical line, and that's what the ordered pair looks like. That's the rule. You technically don't even have to memorize it. Right? And you're going to see it. You're going to see it in geometry. You're going to see it in Algebra 2. You're going to see it in pre-calculus. You're going to see this a lot. So the sooner that you get this and remember it, the better you're going to be. Okay? All right. Your assignment today is going to be on page 219. Please do it and make sure that you finish it. I've got 2 through 10 even, and it's going to be those check problems. And then I got 17 through 25. And I gave you graph paper for that. And you should have plenty there. Do it just like your notes. That's why I gave you your notes. So you do your word problems. There's only 2 of them. Get those in my box today. And then go ahead and work on this homework assignment. And also turn that in as soon as you get done.